So what you want to do next is take your paper stock and take one of your sheets, place it down where you want it to be printed, and then just take some of your tape and create your 3-point registration. I'm just going to place this in each one of my corners so I know that the paper is going to be in the right spot each time. Once I have that, I'm going to take my screen and I'm going to place the screen and move it around on here and figure out where I want it to go. Now, if you don't have clamps on your press and you're just doing it by holding it, you're going to want to take the tape and also mark the outside of the frame so that you know each time you lift up the screen where you're going to be placing your aluminum frame. So each one of these I'm putting down as a guide or a marker. So the idea being, I lift up my screen, I place my paper down, I take the screen, and then I align it in that corner. Then I'm good to go, and I can print, lift this up, and then move my paper out. All right, so now that you're prepared to print, if you have any of these clamps at home, they work really well. If you don't necessarily have to have them. You can get these at Home Depot, relatively cheap. I think they're $3 or $4. But I like to take these and then put either one or two of them on the back of the screen, mainly just so that your squeegee, when you're printing, doesn't fall off the back. So I'm going to take my water-based ink and my mixing stick and just mix it up a little bit. And now that I'm ready to print, I'm going to go ahead and add my ink in. Now what you're going to want to do is, before you start printing, you always want to flood the ink so it doesn't dry in your screen. So I'm going to take this one and flood it. I have everything aligned the way I want. And now if you have someone to help you, you can have them hold down the screen, or with your left hand, if the artwork isn't too big, just hold the screen down. Push down, squeegee, lift up, go ahead and flood your ink. And then I'm going to take my screen off, and now I have my first print. Then I'll just repeat that process, drop in my artwork, get everything laid down, take my screen, align it with the painting tape, get that into my loose registration, hold down the screen, and then the same process. Squeegee, lift up, flood back, and this should only take about maybe a half hour, 20 minutes to dry. By the time you clean up your screen, you should be able to get ready to do your next pass. Alright, so I just drop this on, no clamps, really loose registration. I hold it down, go ahead, even pressure, I flood back and remove. Everything looks good, we're up and running. If you see any little pinholes, you can take some tape and put it on the back. Alright, so here's my next one. I got my off contact. Lift up, flood back, and remove my screen. Now I'll just keep repeating that process with my first color, maybe 4 to 6 prints, and then from there I'll wash out the screen. Once you're done printing, I'm just going to prop up my screen a little bit here, take my ink container, and with some old cardboard or whatever stock you have, I'm going to just take some of my water-based ink, scoop up the ink, and just transfer the remaining ink back into the container. Also take my squeegee and then take all of the ink off of that. Get as much ink back in there as I can. And because this is water-based ink, you'll then be able to take this over to the sink or outside with your garden hose, and you can just wash that out in the sink. So I'm going to take my mixing container and get all my ink back in there. Alright, so once you have your screen and you have all the ink out, you can just take it outside, or if you have a tub or anywhere where you have a sink, because it is water-based ink. And I have a little slop sink outside, and I'm just going to take a regular sponge, get the sponge wet, and just take the screen. And then on both sides, I'm going to just scrub out all that ink and loosen it up, and then just go ahead and hit it with the hose. And then once I have all the ink out, I'm just going to let it dry out in the sun for a few minutes, and then I'm good to go. Alright, my first series of prints dried, so I'm ready to do the next one. So I already took my print and registered it and have my tape set up, and I'm about ready to put my ink in, so I'm just going to line everything up with my tape. And this one I'm just going to overprint, so I'm just mixing up a little of my green paint, and then I'm going to add that in here. Same process, usually to start with, you want to flood the screen just to get the ink going. So I'll take my squeegee, flood it in, and then I'm going to hold down the screen. I already have my off contact. Flood back, lift up. And there's my second color. So I'm going to go through and, print all of these. Line it up. Drop down my screen. Align it with my tape on the desk. Lift up, flood back. And then repeat that process. Alright, so here's my next print. Drop it down. Hold down the screen, even pressure. Flood it back. And just repeat that process on each one of them. Move that one aside. And you could do easy 2 or 3 colors in one day. Do one more pass here. Flood it back. Drop my screen down, align it. As long as you keep the registration loose, you shouldn't have any issues. So if you're printing and your ink is sticking to the back of the screen and you don't have any spray adhesive, you can just take some of this painter's tape. It won't rip the paper, and just tape down your print so that it won't move. You can just do one on the top and the bottom. You can do one on the side if you have to. Drop down your screen, get everything aligned with your tape. Do your print, flood it back. And then you can just peel back your painting tape, like so. And that will hold your print in there nicely. And it won't tear the paper, and you don't have to do any adhesive on it. Just gonna do a little bit of a white overprint as the top layer. Let everything dry, then cut down the cards. Add my ink in. Same process. I'm gonna go ahead and flood it. It's a little bit thicker ink, so I'm doing 3 to 4 passes and then flooding the ink back. Getting a nice opaque pattern on top. I'll go ahead and work my way through. Use my 3-point registration, get everything lined up. Drop down my screen. Do my 3 to 4 passes with this one. Flood the ink back so it doesn't dry in the screen. And then work my way through all the prints and let them dry for about a half hour, then I can cut them down.